Hey everyone, it's Aubrey, recovering perfectionist, queen of distraction / gardener. Welcome back for another weekly garden tour. Thankfully this week I am back to normal health-wise, so we're going to be able to get a little bit more in depth with the things that have been going on in the garden, but really for the most part we're just kind of hitting that point in the year where things are just hitting this plateau. We're doing a little bit more harvesting and then things are getting taken out of the garden. So we're just gonna do a little quick run through of the garden, look at the things, and we'll move on with our day. So let's get started. So first things first, I know normally we don't really talk about the blueberries every week. This one is completely done producing any fruit. On this one right here, the chickens, we've been letting free range. So we've been having to kind of keep an eye on that bush down there that still has fruit on it, and just basically as soon as we see something ripe, we have to pick it or else the girls will get it. They're out right now. And then over here at the janky brick road, I've still got the chamomile that I need to address, the grapevine that we still haven't figured out what we're going to do with exactly, taking over as usual. And then down here, there hasn't been a ton of growth with the little cucumbers, but a little bit of something anyway. And then I have kind of started to pull out the nasturtiums that are over here. They're just starting to die back, looking icky. And I wanted to try and give those cucumbers as much space to grow as possible. But then the giant sunflowers up here, they've got new blooms. The first ones have died back, but I just love those so much. I just wish I was tall enough to actually cut some down and bring them inside. And then this area here, I know I don't really talk too much about. This was 100% the doing of my mom. I think this is a lavender plant from years past. She's tucked some bee balm in here, these petunias, and then there's a salvia and some other bits and bobs thrown in. And I really just love how this is filled in over the course of the summer. I do need to create some kind of divining border. As you can see, the dandelions and grass really encroach on this area, so I need to do some kind of rock border on that side. This has just not been an area of my personal focus, and while I know it needs to be done, it's been kind of my mom's project, so it's not something that is always on my radar. It's just like I'm talking about it, so I'm thinking about it. But when I'm focused on other areas that have been kind of a labor of love for myself personally, this isn't something that I think about, but it is something that I would like to do, so there's not any crazy weeding that needs to be done as we approach the planting season next year. And this space over here is still hands down one of my favorite places in the yard. I absolutely just love the snapdragons and how they're kind of intertwining with the nasturtiums over here. And I am just forever proud of my sage plant. This is a sage plant that I had started from seed back in 2020, so our first year gardening. And I cut it back and it comes back every year. It's beautiful and wonderful. I did harvest a bit yesterday and dried that to make some sage honey for us approaching cold and flu season. If you are interested, tomorrow I'm posting a video where I go through all of our daily essentials just to maintain our overall health, but then also support our immune systems. And then our go-tos during the cold and flu season when we do end up getting sick. And then making the sage honey, I also made some elderberry syrup and some mullein tincture from the mullein at the other end of this bed. And then right here, my mom and I have been eagerly waiting to see what happens with those little oriental melons, and there's still just that wee little babe right there that really hasn't made a ton of progress, so we'll see. This is one of my favorite chunks of snapdragons right here, and then apparently there's a carrot and that lettuce. I don't know what happened there. And then our zucchini this year, normally I just have so much zucchini I don't know what to do with. Like, there's one in there, but normally there's a ton. And the leaves this year, I don't know, do those look normal? I feel like they usually look different. But that's the zucchini sitch. And then the mullein and zinnias. Love it. I know I had talked a couple weeks ago about how I was starting to try and harvest the mullein blooms as well as the leaves. The blooms are just too hard to keep track of. Like, there's just not a huge amount that you're able to collect all at once. So it's just like you have 2 or 3 random little flowers floating around in whatever spot I decided to try and dry them. So I've given up on the blooms. I know I've got a few mixed in with some chamomile that I had harvested a couple weeks back, but I'm primarily sticking with the leaves. I dried some for tincture and then I dried some for teas this cold and flu season. And then as we approach this area, we can just kind of really see how the nasturtium arch is really starting to show some signs of gross stuff. Just so much bug action, which I'm glad that they're here. This is a big reason why I plant these. I'd rather have the bugs on the nasturtiums. I'm realistically not snacking on the nasturtiums as much as I am the other things that I'm growing in the garden that these things would normally be attracted to. It was nice while it lasted, but now it's just pretty gross. And then the nasturtium that I did plant over in this strawberry bed is finally coming up, but there's that. It obviously did not get as much sun as this one did. Kale over here is still doing great. I've harvested a bit of that to make like a kale pesto, which was really good. And then if you caught my video where we're doing our no spend September right now, I did find a chicken thigh recipe that ended up using like 10 cups of kale. Me and Alec liked it. Josh and Jackson were kind of about it, but it was a great way to use a very significant amount of kale, and it turned out really good. I'm going to link the description in the video below, and then I'll also link it in the video where I talk about, you know, our no spend September. I tell you, I'm absolutely loving it. Check that out. Look, it's a piece of broccoli. It's so exciting. Alec and I did actually pull off a head of broccoli that I'd say, like, I can't, this plus the other side. It was a pretty decent size, and he just munched and snacked on that, and he really enjoyed that. But I do think that me clearing out the broccoli and other kale that was in here has allowed a little bit more light to these beans, because since removing those, they have just really taken off. And then all these beans up here, this is even just after Josh and I harvesting all of the biggest ones yesterday. And then over here in lettuce land, things are starting to look a little sad. I think that some of these blooms might open up later in the day as the sun comes out, but I'm kind of feeling like it's about time to pull this out. And then our carrot bed is looking a little worse for wear. The boys did some big harvesting in here the other day, and it just looks a little rough, but I'm really looking forward to these finally drying out so I can save these for seeds for next year. And then over in this bed, these cabbage are looking pretty decent. Even this one over here that I thought was going to be an absolute dud. And then we finally have our first sunflower bloom from the random volunteer sunflowers that ended up over here. The cherry tomatoes have come to the end of our production. And then again, like I had talked about the nasturtiums over there, I'm kind of starting to pull out the nasturtiums that were over here. There was definitely not as much pest activity on these ones as the one on the arch. So I did go in here yesterday and I harvested a bunch more of the seeds. The nasturtium seed capers, the fake capers that I had made a few weeks back, I actually tried those and had the opportunity to actually have a recipe that called for them. It was the recipe that also called for a lot of kale, so I had the chance to use those, and they are so good. My husband doesn't like them, and I don't think either of the boys really cared for them, but I don't know. I personally just think there's something about them. It was tasty and tart and just like a small, fun pickle. Hey, Chicky. And then over here with the tomatoes, there's just not a ton of red. The problem is the beans. The sun that we do get on the garden is really just like from this section right here and like a small portion of the day here. We're not really getting a ton of sun over here anymore. So I don't know. We're gonna have to just wait and see what happens. Part of me is like, should I take the beans down? But then there's a part of me that would rather have beans than tomatoes. So I don't know. I'm just gonna wait and see what happens. I guess worst case scenario, when the weather turns and we really have to prioritize getting the tomatoes off the vines. Worst case scenario, they're going to be inside and they're ripening off the vine, which isn't ideal because then my homegrown tomatoes taste like a store-bought tomato, which hurts my heart, but what am I gonna do? Beans are greater than tomatoes. Another little sunflower in here. And then down here, I did harvest a yellow squash from this. Got that wee patty pan here. And then there's some yellow squash on this one as well. And then the little baby that was at the end last week is gone. And then the peppers down here, still just looking sad per usual. We've got the little jalapenos down at the end. And then up here, just the beautiful asters, the giant pumpkins, some red cherry tomatoes, and then just the sad peas up here that Alec has been picking before they're ripe. My sad basil that I've been whittling away at. And then more pumpkin leaves, these carrots that I've kind of forgotten existed. More pumpkins. I had mentioned in last week's video that the pumpkin vines, a lot of them are starting to die back, which means we're starting to approach the season where we'll be getting to have our big pumpkin harvest, which I am so excited about. If you missed that video in the 2023 weekly garden series, I will link it in the description below. It was so fun to see all the fun pumpkins that we got last year, and I'm really looking forward to doing that again this year. Over the course of the last few days, Jackson has really been paying close attention to how the pumpkins have been growing, and even though he doesn't show a ton of interest in the garden, it just fills my heart with so much joy to see the areas that he is actually interested in. That again just makes me want to prioritize a very specific section of our yard, like just dedicated to doing pumpkins, so I have an area of the garden that he is interested in being a part of. Here are some of those pumpkins. Oh my gosh, I just am loving those snapdragons so much, and the calendula is just coming back so strong. I've been able to dry a ton of that. Just everybody pooping all over the place. That is hands down the thing that we do not like about free ranging the chickens. Obviously, it's a problem when our seedlings and stuff are young and in the garden. Right now, we are clearly at a point where everything is very well established, or we just don't care anymore. Like that bed over there, have at it. I've obviously not been taking care of it. But aside from them scratching and getting into things, it's just the poop. They're just pooping all over the damn place. These asters, I still just can't get over. There's a lovely zinnia there. And then this pumpkin plant right here, I think that little babe down there is the only one. That was a pumpkin variety that I had saved seeds from a pumpkin from the pumpkin patch a few years ago. I think it was actually when I was pregnant with Alex. So that would have been like fall of 2021. So I'm excited to see these growing, but also just, I really want, please, sweet pumpkin, be a successful pumpkin so I can have more of those pumpkin seeds, because I think that I planted all of the ones that I had. And then this bed over here has not been neglected nearly as much as the other one, but I'm for the most part really just harvesting the calendula and drying that here and there. I clearly don't care about how it looks at this point in the year. I'm not necessarily looking forward to wrapping things up. It's just at that point of the year where things are starting to die back. It's not really worth my time and energy to be trying to make things like that look nice again. It's just, nobody got time for that right now. But over here, this area with the beans and the morning glory and that sunflower that's gonna bloom, love it. That hibiscus tree, I absolutely love. And then I got my first Cosmo bloom, and this is absolutely one of the best and biggest blooms from the giant purple zinnia seeds that I had gotten from Botanical Interest this year. I'm definitely saving the seeds from this one. And I'm so relieved that I at least got one Cosmo bloom this year. My Cosmos last year did pretty good. I planted a yellow variety, and I definitely gravitate towards more pinks and purples and whites when it comes to flowers. But I don't know, I think I might want to get that yellow one again just because it did do so well. And I don't know, maybe I did something wrong, but maybe there's also something that yellow one has going for it. We're gonna take a quick stroll through pumpkin land. Loving how that one's looking. Got that white pumpkin back in there. Another little white buddy down there. Looks like there's another little something there. Again, this is going to be one of those situations where we start harvesting the pumpkins when they die back and we really find everything that there is. I remember that last year when we had done our pumpkin harvest, there were some things that we had found that we didn't even expect to be there. Then aside from pumpkins, the corn, Jackson is so excited. I am thankful that we at least got one corn stalk. This is a popcorn variety of corn, so I'm hoping that we at least get a decent enough ear for us to have just a small helping of popcorn, because that is one thing over in this area that Jackson is particularly excited about. And obviously there is some severe excitement regarding our big pumpkin over here. We've got this little baby here, and then this bigger guy over here, foot for reference. I'm a size 6.5, 7. And then this one, whoop, is just getting so big. That is like the biggest pumpkin we've ever grown. And obviously this is a pumpkin variety that is for bigger pumpkins, but I'm so stinking excited to see how big that gets. There's Josh. He broke his back at the bus stop today, giving Alec a mid-air cartwheel. I have to take him to the chiropractor later. Okay, we're just gonna go pop by the zinnias and then we're gonna wrap things up. Ooh, I'll have to show you the bean teepee first though. Last week after I started feeling better, Alec and we came through here and pretty much just wiped out any of the blooms that were actually open, made some beautiful arrangements in the house. I have one really big main arrangement that looks absolutely adorable, and then one arrangement that is dedicated to only the blooms for the ones that I'm going to be drying out to save the seeds from. It got really hard when I was mixing things together because things would die back, and I'm like, am I keeping you or not? I can't remember if you looked beautiful when you weren't dead. So that's that with the zinnias. Okay, let's go look at the bean teepee and then we're gonna be all done. So the bean teepee, I've really just kind of lost hope on. I'm sure that we'll probably end up getting like one bean from it. There has been not a single morning glory bloom over here. I don't even know what happened to the plant where I'd planted moonflowers over here and that was doing okay, and now it's gone. But I've got a pumpkin plant here and here that probably won't make a pumpkin. So I think that I'm gonna give this one more go next year. but it's going to have to be in a different part of the yard where I can let it be exclusively for beans, because I know that, like, obviously you saw the beans that are in the garden. They are doing absolutely amazing. If this was in an area where it was easy to get watered on a regular basis, it's not hard for me to accidentally neglect this. So if this was getting regular water, if it wasn't impacted by the chickens when they come out in free range, if it wasn't getting nibbled at by the deer when she comes through, it would probably be doing a lot better than it is. But we are where we are right now with this situation. And originally my thought was, I need to have this somewhere where I can see the boys. So I wanted to have it where I could have a view of the house from it, because I imagine they're going to be playing in this. I want to see where they are. Like, I want to have a view of their swing set when they're outside. I don't think that that's necessarily something that I really need to factor in the future. I mean, if they do spend time in it, it's most likely going to be because I'm outside and out in the garden with them. So I'll figure something out for next year. Dorothy, come here, chicken. You're adorable. Alrighty, so that is all for real. Thank you for tagging along for another garden tour. I'll see you next week. As always, I love you. Have fun and be kind.